So today we're going to look at somebody who had an amazingly successful hair transplant, even though he wasn't a good candidate. Look at the case, and I'm going to reveal the reason why he managed to have a successful hair transplant when so many things were working against him. Let's go. Watching My Hair Implants, the best YouTube channel on all things hair transplant. My name is Jabril. What do you mean you still haven't subscribed? So let's start by having a look at some background information about the case. The gentleman is called Couldve. He's kind of a celebrity, minor celebrity here in the UK, and he's been losing his hair since his early 20s. Very, very tough cases these usually are. When people are losing their hair very young, and they're really desperate for a hair transplant, it can be very difficult. And he had his first operation in his mid to late 20s, I believe. He's had 3 procedures so far, and we'll go through them one at a time soon. He spent around a whopping $30,000. But in a recent interview, I noticed he said he's not going to have a 4th operation for whatever reason. It can't be because of his donor hair. We'll come to that in a minute. But for some reason, he said he's not going to have a 4th. You can see one of the major things that was working against this guy is the fact that he had his hair transplant while his hair loss was progressing and while he was still very young. Let's have a look at some before pictures before he had his first, second and third hair transplant. So this is a picture, I believe, that was a few months, maybe a year before his first hair transplant, which gives us a good idea about the state of his hair loss. And the hair loss is mostly frontal. As you can see, the front is badly thinning, especially in the corners. I mean, this corner is completely kind of gone. And the other thing we can say is his hair loss is still progressing, because you can see different shades. His hair's got different shades, like this bit is lighter, and as you work your way in, it gets darker. So definitely his hair loss was progressing. Fortunately, we can't see his crown, so we can't really say anything about that. And we can't see the other corner, but we can assume that it's fairly similar to this. In terms of his donor hair looks okay, nothing, spectacular. But I think the more important thing is his hair density. Obviously, I'm not with him, I can't measure his hair density, but I just suspect that his hair density is kind of average to below average. That is just my hunch. This picture, I believe, is before one of his hair transplants. I suspect to be the second, because for some reason the front of his hairline looks a little bit thicker than before. So I wonder whether he actually had a hair transplant and this is a picture taken before his second hair transplant. But obviously the fact that he's come back for a second hair transplant means that his hair loss was progressing, and as you can see, the front is looking, it's got some kind of islands of hair, like there's some hair here, there's some hair here, but then in between those there's like nice patches of thinning where you can actually see straight through to the scalp. We do know that he was not keen on taking medication. He wasn't taking any medication at any stage from what I know, so maybe this is why. This is another picture before one of his transplants, and as you can see, the surgeon has drawn a line, so I'm assuming there were some grafts planned for this area here. The front is actually looking a lot better than before, which makes me think that this is a picture taken before his second hair transplant, not the first. And this is another picture taken before one of his procedures. The front is looking much better than before, but the thinning is progressing. As you can see, there's a little bit of hair here, which I assume was planted in the first hair transplant, and you can see lots of thinning here. There's some thinning here, there's some thinning here, there's definitely some thinning here, and it appears to be progressing. So it appears that he definitely needed a second procedure because the hair loss is progressing. Now, there was something very unique and amazing that I've never seen in any other hair transplant about this particular case. Let's have a look. So let's have a look at the timeline of his hair transplants, and this is something I have never, in 15 years of looking at hair transplants and kind of researching them and reading about them, I've never seen this before. And it's a very, very condensed schedule. So he's had his first hair transplant and he's had 1,200 grafts. Very, very small, very tiny number of grafts. Second hair transplant was only 1,257 grafts, and that was 1 year later. So there was a 1 year gap between the first and the second, and there was just another year gap between the second and the third transplant. And in the third, he's had 1,200 grafts. So 2 things are going on here. Very small number of grafts each time, and we'll explain why that is really, really important in this case. And the gaps were tiny. 1 year, basically he's had 3 hair transplants in what? I can't do the maths. 4 years, 3 years. So very condensed schedule, and he was not on meds. So I read that he did not want to be on medications because he was worried about side effects and things, and this also played a crucial role in his story. It's time now to have a look at some after pictures after he's had his first, second and third procedure. Let's have a look. So this picture, I'm not really 100% sure whether it's after the first, second or third hair transplant. Probably after the first, judging by how kind of, well, fresh the hair looks, but I can't be 100% sure. But what I like is how they kept this kind of nice high hairline. That is really good. It just suits, this is, I suspect this is how his natural original hairline was. So that really looks good. Now, I'm not really sure whether this is because of the way he styled his hair or what, you know, it's due to the design of the hairline, but I would have preferred the hairline to be slightly thinner here at the front. It kind of looks a little bit pluggy here. A really important part of hair transplant aesthetics is that you make the hairline a little bit thinner than what's behind it. That's how our natural hairlines are. The hairline is thinner and then it gets gradually thicker as you work your way back. And I can't really see that here, but it might be because of the way he styled his hair. This is a nice picture from the side. As you can see, the hairline here at the front looks nice and thick. It's actually looking so thick that he had it slicked back. Obviously he's had grafts taken from the sides, so maybe this is why he's chosen to keep the sides short. In fact, in all his pictures he's got the sides very short, but from this angle obviously it's not the best picture. It looks pretty good. These are more recent pictures of his hairline, and he's just got this very nice design going. The high hairline looks really good, and from the side here, this is probably the best shot. I mean, the hairline is still looking a little bit pluggy at the front, but I can't be 100% sure whether this is a design issue or the way he's styling his hair, maybe putting gel on it or something. And this is purely a personal preference. I would have preferred the hairline on the side here, just where the frontal hairline meets the side, to be tiny bit forward. I really think that would have suited him, but that's a really minor issue. This is an excellent hair transplant, really. This final picture is looking pretty dapper. He's got his suit on and it's looking good. He's still keeping the sides fairly short, and the frontal hairline is looking really good. He's got it slicked back, and I don't know whether because he has it slicked back, it's showing the kind of the hairline to be maybe slightly thin. Let's zoom in a little bit and have a look. So the hairline looks slightly thin. You can see through to the scalp in places, but I don't know whether that is how it is or whether it's because how he styled it, put some gel on it and slicked it back. And obviously when you slick hair back, you tend to see the scalp right through. Actually, we had one more picture, and this is the final picture in this roll, and the hair is looking really tall and proud. It's looking excellent. The hairline is looking just sensational. I know it's not the best angle, but the hairline is looking superb. So this is for what he had, a total of about 3,600 grafts. This is incredible. Watch all the way to the end, because this hair transplant, this result, even though it looks amazing, could have been improved. Amazingly, it could have been improved, and I'll tell you exactly how. But now I want to tell you about the major secrets of this hair transplant, when so many things were working against this guy. He was young, his hair density wasn't great, he started losing his hair, you know, at the age of 22. He had his first procedure at still in his 20s. And he refused to take medication, so it seemed like everything was just working against him, yet he ended up with an amazingly successful hair transplant. The reason is why, and now I'm going to reveal exactly why. I think the biggest secret to his success is the excellent strategy. The strategy was really spot on. Conservative graft numbers, as in low graft numbers. He's had only 3,600 grafts in total. This was the cornerstone, the key to his success, because this protects the client. Having these smaller graft numbers protects the client against future loss, because remember, when he had his first hair transplant, he was a young guy still in his 20s, so this was a really key strategy. Now this strategy is not right for everybody. This is why it's so important that you sit down with someone and have a strategy, a plan for your hair transplant. Incredible, but his hair transplant could have been even better if he did a couple of things. Let's have a look. One thing he could have done better, obviously, that we said, is to use medications. We don't know, I don't know if he's using minoxidil, but he definitely said, I read articles that he said he's not going to use finasteride at all because he's worried about the side effects, which is, you know, fair enough. But if he had used medications, especially both two combined, maybe he wouldn't have needed second or third procedure so soon, or possibly ever. Another minor issue for me is the timing between the operations. Could he have waited? 1 year is really pushing it, but because he wasn't on medications, maybe he was kind of forced to do this because his hair loss was progressing and he really had no other option but to actually go for it. Luckily, his overall strategy with his surgeon was really good, and this really served to protect him. So we learned two important lessons from this hair transplant case. Number one is almost anybody can have a really successful hair transplant. I guarantee you 90% of the people watching this video are better candidates than Callum Best. Yet he was still able to have a really successful hair transplant. So what excuses do you have? Second lesson in this is that strategy is more important than anything else. It's more important than the clinic, it's more important than what technique you use, the cost. Forget all that. The right strategy is worth its weight in gold. To be honest, it's the difference between success and failure, which is why I always say before you embark on a hair transplant, have a consultation purely to come up with a plan for you. I do those kind of consultations. You can get in touch with me or have it with someone else. Just have the consultation and come up with a plan. Don't just rush and have a hair transplant because you just want something cheap and quick. Now over to you. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Take care. See you soon.